What is Halloween? Today it's a highly commercialised celebration which brings to mind trick-or-treating, gatherings filled with Halloween party games and spooky treats. But the holiday has some convoluted origins. So is it Christian or is it pagan? The answer is yes. I suppose it largely depends on your beliefs and how you celebrate it. The name Halloween traces back to medieval Christianity. And the word hallow, which is derived from the Old English word for holy. And it seems it can also mean saint. Back in them days, the Christian holiday we know as All Saints' Day was called All Hallows' Day. And the day before, when an evening mass was held, it was All Hallows' Eve. And obviously the name eventually got shortened to Halloween. Now that's it. Roughly history of the name, but the roots of Halloween go back to ancient festival of Samhain, which occurred on November the 1st, but kicked off the evening before, which is considered the earliest known root of today's Halloween traditions. It was a pivotal time of year for the ancient Celtic people, when seasons changed, and that particular date was considered the beginning of the winter period, the date on which the herds were returned from pasture, land was retenured and renewed. But probably more importantly, it was believed that the boundary between this world and the next became especially thin at this time of year, enabling them to connect with the dead. When the souls of those who had died were believed to return to visit their homes and family, and those who died during the year were believed to journey to the other world. It's also said that people set bonfires on hilltops for relighting their hearth fires for the winter months, also to frighten away evil spirits, and they sometimes wore masks and other disguises to avoid being recognised by the ghosts thought to be present. And this was probably when beings such as witches, hobgoblins, fairies and demons came to be associated with Halloween. It was also thought to be a favourable time for divination in matters such as marriage, health and death. Obviously where the history of Halloween gains its haunted connections. And this is what we think went on in Celtic prehistory before the Romans. By AD 43, the Roman Empire had conquered the majority of Celtic territory. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic lands, two festivals of Roman origin were combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. And the second was a day to honour Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. And the symbol of Pomona is the apple. And incorporating this into celebrations of Samhain probably explains the tradition of bobbing for apples. Now, Halloween has Christian roots, of course. Christianity has a habit of plagiarising other cultures' beliefs, sites and ideas. And in the early 7th century, Pope Boniface IV put All Saints' Day on the calendar when he dedicated the Pantheon in Rome to the saints. But that was on May the 13th. But in the next century, Pope Gregory III changed the date to November the 1st when he dedicated the Chapel of St Peter's Basilica to the saints. Then during the Middle Ages, as the Christian Roman holiday of All Saints spread to other Christianised areas, Hallowtide, as it was called, tradition merged with local cultures. In Celtic regions that formerly celebrated Samhain, it's thought that the local Christian Halloween traditions that arose included jack-o'-lanterns, bonfires and the costumes and dressing up. And during the Reformation, essentially it put an end to the religious holidays among Protestants. Although in Britain, especially, Halloween continued to be celebrated as a secular holiday, meaning not connected with religious or spiritual matters. There are several games traditionally associated with Halloween. Some of these games originated as divination rituals, or ways of telling one's future, regarding death, marriage and children generally. During the Middle Ages, these rituals were mainly done in rural communities as they were considered very serious practices. But in recent centuries, these divination games have been a more common feature of festivities in Ireland and Britain, and they often involve apples and hazelnuts because in Celtic mythology apples were strongly associated with the other world and immortality, and also derived from the Roman celebration of Pomona, as I mentioned earlier, while hazelnuts are associated with divine wisdom. Now, Halloween has always been a time filled with mystery, magic and superstition. And as mentioned, it began as a Celtic end of summer festival during which people felt especially close to the deceased relatives and friends. For these friendly family spirits, they set places at dinner tables sometimes. They left treats on doorsteps and along the sides of the roads. And they also lit candles to help loved ones find their way back to the spirit world. But today, our Halloween ghosts are often depicted as more fearsome and malevolent, and our customs and superstitions are scarier too, because of our lifestyle, I suppose. I mean, we avoid crossing paths with black cats, afraid that it might bring us bad luck. This idea rooted in the Middle Ages when many people believed that witches avoided detection by turning themselves into black cats. And we also avoid walking under ladders for some weird reason. This superstition may have come from ancient Egypt actually, who believed that triangles were sacred geometry. It may also be that walking under ladders can be bloody dangerous. And also around Halloween we try to avoid breaking mirrors, stepping on cracks in the road and spilling salt. Weird race really. Now this is the legend of Wenwood. It was a dark, shadowy, doom-laden place, which was a consequence of an ancient evil that still lurked within its depths. And this dark, dank, primeval wood, somewhere in ancient Albion, with its moss and lichen dripping so heavily from the tangled treetops that the sky was nearly obscured, and the algae-covered boulders, ancient twisted trees, and the profuse ground cover of brambles and ferns. It's no wonder this primeval wood is haunted by tales of druids, ghosts, supernatural entities, as it's a threshold to another world. It's a very, very ancient forest, far older than man can remember. It has largely been left to grow wild and untamed, free of man's hand of doom. And with this unfettered evolution, the trees have grown old and gnarled, and crooked branches hang down in an eerie, oppressive canopy. And it is rumoured to be one of the last ancient druid groves in existence, a place where they conducted ceremonial rites beneath the ancient yews and oaks, carving spiral symbols and runes into the mossy rocks that can still be seen today. Weird flowers cling to every rock and branch, and birds dart and dance between the branches. A bubbling brook can be heard in the distance. It can be a peaceful and beautiful sight, but that's only in daylight. Because come the dark of the night, the wood transformed from peaceful sacred sanctuaries to the domain of a diversity in dark misshapen creatures corrupted by an ancient evil. And these creatures include hellhounds and the spectral cloaked horsemen who accompany them, who hunt across the dark woods and venture out across the dark moors in the dead of night. They are said to be in search of souls of lonely travellers, and they are followed by their leader, Woden, the wild huntsman. Now this is an old Celtic legend, and it has its roots in ancient primal beliefs. The legends say up and down the country that every year after Imbolc, many people have witnessed the spectral pack of huntsmen in full cry. They are said to straddle large, blacker than black horses, and their snarling hounds with hideous staring yellow eyes, huge drawling fangs, and a howl that rattles around the ancient trees and echoes along the misty moors. This spectral nocturnal horde is a wild hunt, which was known and featured throughout the ancient lands. It swept through the dark forests and moors in the coldest, darkest part of the year, when ferocious winds and storms howled over the land. And anyone who finds themselves out of doors at night during this time of year may find themselves being carried away to who knows what end. When ancient accounts of this wild hunt mention a leader, it is said that it's Woden, the god of the dead, sometimes called Odin. He is a war god and the collector of fallen warriors' souls. In some lands he is known as Herne the Hunter, but either way the wild hunt is connected with the dead and the underworld. It may have been a form of ancestor worship or the cult of the dead. The wild hunt was a very bad omen either way, usually foretelling a time of strife and death. So when the winter winds howl and the fires are lit, it's best to stay indoors, safely shut away from the dark paths and the wild heaths, because those who wander out by themselves during these dark nights may hear a sudden rustling through the tops of the trees. A rustling that might be the wind, though the rest of the wood is still and silent. But then they will hear the howling of the dogs fill the air. And the host of the wild souls sweep down, fire flashing from their eyes of the black hounds, and the hooves of the black horses sound like thunder. Now, this dark primeval wood is also notorious for its pixies, who seem to haunt every shadow and behind every tree. They have a mischievous reputation, known for leading lost travellers astray along the lonely, empty tracks. And then we have the Banshee of Wenwood, a supernatural entity. A Banshee is a disembodied spirit and can appear in many forms. The one in Wenwood takes the form of an old woman with a black veil covering her face and dressed all in black rags, with long grey hair, rotten teeth and long fingernails, and a hunched back. And her name is Ban Sif, which is Gaelic for Woman of the Fairies. Her mournful wailing and screaming in the dead of night is a foretelling of death. Your imminent death, unless you can escape the woods quickly. Now, legend says that banshees don't cause death. They only serve as a warning of it. But in the case of Bin Sif, legend is wrong. Apparently not all banshees are hate-filled creatures like this one. There are some that have strong ties to their families in life and continue to watch over them in death. But Ban Sif's family were the cause of her death. So she has reason to hate her family and any other family. And she appears as a disturbed and frightening apparition, now filled with hatred for every living thing. Now Ban Sif's mouth is always open as her piercing scream torments the souls of her chosen victims. Your only chance of saving your sanity is to stuff your ears with moss and dirt and run. Because Ban Sif is tied to the dark wood by Woden and can't leave.